Okay, thanks. Welcome everyone to the Albany Common Council's caucus and work session prior to our regular meeting. Today's Monday, November 4th. Please call the roll.
Yes. Adams.
Present.
Anani. Valloran.
Here.
Clark.
Here.
Here. Flynn.
Here.
Frederick.
Here.
Hoey.
Here.
Johnson. Keegan.
Here.
Kimbrough.
Here.
Love. Robinson. Romero. Zamer. 12 present, 3 absent.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll start off hearing from our treasurer, just giving us a quick update on the speed camera.
Sure.
and-
So we're about a month in, and I'll read for the virtue of everybody at home, I'll read what I had passed out to you earlier today, which is a kind of a quick summary that I did at 5:30 today. So as of 5:30 today, we have had about 17,500 tickets issued for speeders going over 11 miles an hour over the speed limit, and 3,283 tickets have been paid. Of those speeders, 12,147 are going 11 to 15 miles per hour over the speed limit. An additional 4,382 were going 16 to 20 miles over, and an additional 1,085 are going 21 plus miles and over, so 41 miles and over or more. And of those 1,085, 247 were going over 45 plus miles per hour. We have a high with one person from Voorheesville going 43 miles an hour over the speed limit in front of Eagle Point Elementary School, 63 miles an hour. About 2/3 of the tickets issued are to out-of-town license plates, and of the worst speeders, 20 plus over the speed limit, almost 3/4 are from people whose license plate and registration are from out of town, out of the city of Albany, outside the city of Albany zip codes, because our zip codes in the city of Albany, that's the way we determine this, are 12205, 12203, and 12211 are shared zip codes with Guilderland Colony and Loudonville, respectively. So not all those, even though they say Albany for the zip code, they're not all from the city of Albany. We'll go on to warnings. More than 67,000 warnings have been issued thus far, 36,000 before any cameras went online before October 7th, and 31,000 since October 7th. Those are mostly coming from a few from Ash, and the rest are coming from Hackett Boulevard by Albany Academy, and also down closer to McDonald's. Prior to the issuance of tickets, just 3 school zones had generated 250,000 recorded speeding events of over 20 miles an hour, 250,000 that were evaluated by the company. And of those, many had received they generated the 36,000. Out of those, they generated the 36,000 warnings that were issued. As far as location, Albany High has seen 3,502 tickets issued. Eagle Point, 9,930 issued thus far, almost 10,000. It also appears that incidents that are reviewed have been slowing down. What happens is the cameras are set off by someone who's going speeding. GATSO, the company, reviews it. APD reviews it. And of those, a fair number are kicked out for a whole bunch of different issues. Can't read the license plate. There may have been 2 cars going at the same time. Changing lanes makes things difficult sometimes, apparently. But what I can say is that the number of incidents that have been at these locations has been slowing down over the last week or 2. So we'll likely see a similar surge at newly ticketed locations, and then a reduction similarly as we go forward. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. I know it's been kind of a hot topic out there in social media and elsewhere. So if anybody has any questions while you got me here, let me know.
Yeah, no, we'll do questions offline so we can move along, right?
That's fine.
So, thank you.
Text me.
All right. So jumping into our agenda, we have a public hearing for the budget. It's the second budget hearing. It's ordinance 28, 21, 24. we'll start the meeting with that. Then, next, we'll have approval of minutes from a previous meeting. I'll be offering the October 21st, 2024 meeting minutes for approval. Moving along to local laws introduced by Mr. Anani, Local Law L 2024. It's a local law in relation to broadening the employee residency requirement. It'll be a referral to the council's law committee. Next, on to ordinances. Ordinance is introduced by Mr. Ballerin. It's a USD Ordinance 65-111-24 in relation to requirements for signs. That will be a referral to the council's planning committee. Okay, then next by Mr. Johnson's, also USDO Ordinance 66-111-24. It's in relation to changing the zoning at 31 Trinity Place. That's going to be a referral to the council's planning committee also. Okay, moving on. All right, Mr. Anani's ordinance 2381-24. It's an ordinance. It's a USD ordinance that went to the planning committee. Or not? Oh, right for the right. It's yes, gotcha. Scratch that. All right. Then next to resolutions introduced by Ms. Keegan, Resolution 122-111, 24 R's resolution of the council in recognition of Native American Heritage Month. We'll be voting on that. We're typically all co-sponsors. That's 122-111, 24 R. The next by Ms. Frederick is Resolution 123-111, 24 R. It's the budget intent memo, and that resolution will be a referral to the Finance Committee. All right, and then next we will have an MC, which should be on your desk. It's by Ms. Frederick. It's Resolution 124-111, 24 R in relation to the Capital Region Black Health and Wellness Exhibition hosted by Victoria Fitness. Okay. And there's a request to take that out of order. I don't know when you want to do that, Mr. President. There's a request to do the MC out of order, so at what point do you want to? Okay, for public comment. Okay. All right. So that's that. Okay, then next, the resolution by Ms. Frederick on resolutions held, Resolution 82-81-24 R's resolution approving the transfer of budget funds. It's for DGS for equipment operator. We'll be voting on that. That's 82-81-24 R. Okay, then next by Mr. Ballerin's resolution held 93-91-24 R. It's a resolution of council reappointing Tina Lieberman as a member of the Sustainability Commission. Be voting on that. And then also Resolution 94-9124R. It's a resolution also reappointing Gabriela Sabeda Mora as a member of Sustainability. We'll be voting on that. And then lastly, also by Mr. Bellerin, Resolution 102-9224R is a resolution of the council authorizing the execution of the franchise agreement with Spectrum Northeast LLC. We'll be voting on that. That is the last item on our agenda. But also for miscellaneous, Mr. President, we have a motion by Mr. Bellerin. You have that? Yeah. It's for the seeker for ordinance 175324. Do you have it? And with that, that's all for the agenda.
We'll now call the order Albany Common Council meeting Monday, November 4th, 2024 into session. Can the clerk please call the roll?
Adams.
Present.
Anani. Bellerin.
Here.
Clark. Farrell.
Here.
Flynn. Frederick.
Here.
Hoey.
Here.
Johnson.
Present.
Keegan.
Here.
Kimbrough.
Here.
Love. Robinson.
Here.
Romero. Zamer. 12 present, 3 absent.
Thank you. Can you all rise with me and say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then after that, a quick moment of silence. Thank you. And now we'll proceed to item on the agenda. We have a public hearing on this year's budget. Anyone wishing to speak upon the public hearing you can only confine yourself to speak about this year's 2025 year physical budget. Unlike public comment, your remarks afterwards, the council members can ask you questions on your remarks, unlike public comment. You will have 5 minutes to speak about the budget, those who have signed up for the public hearing on the budget, and the clerk will call you to the podium. With that being said, Madam Clerk.
A notice is hereby given that the Common Council public hearing will be held on November 4th, 2024 at 7 p.m. and will be held in advance of the potential passage of the following ordinance. This meeting will be an in-person meeting in the Common Council Chambers, City Hall, and will be held on the following matters. Ordinance 28-21-24. An ordinance adopting the City of Albany's budget for fiscal year 2025 as presented by the Mayor on October 1st, 2024. Documents may be inspected between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday in the office of the Common Council, 24 Eagle Street, Room 206, Albany, New York 12207. Efforts will also be made to make documents available for viewing online. This public hearing will be held pursuant to guidelines established in the Open Meetings Law, and anyone wishing to be heard can submit written comments at commoncouncil@albanyny.gov or provide in-person testimony on the ordinance before the Common Council for consideration. The public hearing will be live streamed to our YouTube page. We encourage all interested parties to submit written comments by 12 noon on November 4th, 2024. Anyone wishing to be heard will have an opportunity to do so at the above stated time and location.
Thank you. And once again, when you come to, you will have 5 minutes. The light will turn green, which means, speak. Please state your name and address for the record. When it turns yellow, that means you have 1 minute remaining. And then when it turns red, conclude your comments. Can the clerk please call the first speaker for the public hearing?
Lynn Jackson.
Thank you. My name is Lynn Jackson, and I live at 223 South Swan Street in Albany South End. First, I would like to commend the Common Council for passing 2 bills having to do with public health, which will greatly improve the health of the citizens of Albany. Thank you for approving the fluoridation of water, and thank you for reducing the speed limit to 25 miles an hour. Both of these public health initiatives will have a positive effect on our city's budget. The healthier our citizens are, the healthier our budget will be. I hope the city will budget funds for another public health initiative, renovating bath number 2. I'm very happy that the city is investing money in renovating the Lincoln Park pool. However, the pool is only open for 2 months of the year. So what are we supposed to swim the other 10 months of the year? And on rainy days, Albany really, really, really needs an indoor public pool. Albany used to have 3 indoor pools. When the first 2 pools closed, I did not notice or object because I did not know how to swim, and I did not know, more importantly, how much fun it is to swim. I won't go into the story of why I got into swimming in my 50s, but suffice it to say, a friend of mine talked me into a triathlon. So I went down to bath number 2. I'd already lived in the South End for 25 years, and I had never been there before. It always looked so abandoned. But once I learned to go to the pool and to go swimming, it was absolutely a magical place. There is nothing like the pool itself. I don't know how many people here were there when the pool was open, but it was lined with white tiles. It had huge plants in the front window. But the very best part of bath number 2 was the skylight. There was nothing like going to the pool on a very cold day, and you go into the nice, warm pool house. You get in the pool, you lie on your back, and you could look up at the sky through the skylight. It was a huge skylight. It covered the entire pool. And you could see the snow falling. It was absolutely wonderful. Why was this wonderful city amenity closed and abandoned 14 years ago? At that time, my Common Council representative was Lester Freeman. Instead of representing his constituents and keeping the pool open, he wanted it closed. I don't understand why, but had he advocated for the pool at that time, I believe it would be open today. The last time I swam in bath number 2 was the last day it was open to the public. About 40 of us had a protest at the pool, but still no one in the city listened. Bath number 2 has become an abandoned eyesore. I have been told the building is in terrible disrepair. I have a hard time understanding why my city would allow this to happen to such a wonderful place. I know that operating a public pool can be expensive and it comes with risks. But Albany really needs an indoor public pool. Swimming is a wonderful exercise for people of all ages. I read in the paper that the state of New York has funds for pools. Perhaps the city could look into that. Bath number 2 is about 120 years old. It is a historic building. I am hoping that the city will save the building and recreate the magical bath number 2. Please add funds to the budget to look into rescuing the building and again operating a public pool. Vice President Kalama Harris has focused her campaign on joy. Let's add some joy and magic to our beautiful city and reopen bath number 2. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Council members have any questions? Ms. Keegan? Ms. Jackson? Unlike public comment period, they can.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson, are you aware that the city has already maxed out its SWIMS fund for the year?
Has mapped out what?
Has maxed out its New York State SWIMS fund for the year?
No.
And we can't comment back, correct? Thank you.
But that doesn't mean we can't have city funds look into saving the pool and saving the city's pool.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you.
Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
I apologize.
Can you please raise your hand definitively
That's on
when
me.
we ask, when they get done speaking? Go ahead.
A quick question. When it was operating, how many people used it on a regular basis? Just to get, for some of us that may have not had experience with it or may have not seen it in operations.
Well, that's a really good question. Now, because you have to look at, obviously how many people use the pool. However, I lived in the neighborhood and I didn't realize it was a pool house. Unfortunately, it was called bath number 2, and you know, sometimes people have bad associations with the word bathhouse, and I think the city should have changed the name to public pool number 2, but okay. There were, I know that the free school students used to use the pool. When I used to go there early in the morning, there were often many people in the pool. It was not as crowded as the Jewish Community Center pool, but since bath number 2 is closed, the YMCA closed their pool on Washington Avenue, so there's no, that doesn't exist anymore. And recently, the University of Albany took gravel and filled in their pool, and so really there's no place. So I don't know where the swimmers go. I just stopped swimming because there's no place to swim, except in the summertime. And last summer, Lincoln Park pool was closed, no place to swim. Swimming's really important. I mean, the one thing I didn't talk about is that, you know, we need to look at, you know, teaching children how to swim. It's a really important thing, and it's something one can do one's entire life. You know, unlike running, you know, which eventually, you know, you can't run anymore, but you can still swim.
Did I see another council member's hand? No? Ganani?
I just want to thank you for coming down. This is, we're in a budget
Ganani,
process.
Can we please?
Yes, I'm gonna ask the question, yes.
Questions, not thanking people for speaking. We understand that. Get to your question. Thank you.
Well, I just want to say, like similar to some of the questions that were asked, just want to say thank you for coming in, really, and I hope that you encourage, as it relates to advocacy, are you going to encourage your neighbors to come and continue to speak up and advocate for reopening of the pool bathhouse?
Yeah, I'll be back.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Keith Irish.
Good evening, members of the Common Council present. My name is Keith Irish, currently in the 9th Ward, but a lifelong city resident. I'm here at the last public hearing on ordinance 282124, the 2025 proposed city budget. Many issues have come to the attention of the Finance Committee, including but not limited to the shortchanging of the Community Police Review Board required funding based on Local Law J that you passed, but this administration continues to circumvent. Other issues include additional positions in the Animal Control Office, mainly due to recent issues on Central Avenue, and workforce development needs. Unfortunately, not much attention has been put on this administration's excessive pay increases to department heads and their alternates, while giving next to nothing to actual employees that do the work. You want them to work for the city, you need to take care of them first. There are many other locations where funding could be trimmed, such as smaller vehicles that cost less to purchase and operate, to make sure building lighting is turned off after hours, and athletic fields that are not lit up when no sports games are being played. These two issues are such a waste of energy. Some departments sure seem to waste funding on excessive printing needs, while others are continued to be cut back to a point of why bother. One issue that was supposed to have been trimmed starting with the last Common Council was the excessive need to issue bonds for paying for things. The cutbacks lasted for a while, but it's right back to where it was years ago. I can't end these comments by not bringing up the continued underfunding of your and my community media cable access channels. Almost all of you have never been in the current production studio and have never considered the benefits of offered to you and the people that elected you with proper utilization of the 3 PEG channels. Of course, this requires more funding than you allocate out of the franchise fee income on residents' cable television statements. Imagine if we were in the state of Massachusetts that mandates 100% of that imposed fee to go to the operation of their operational needs. Or if New York State's proposed legislation to mandate a minimum of 40% to be used for PEG needs. Just again earlier today, the current mayor again had a press conference unannounced to the general public until after it was completed. Your community media staff should have been there to cover this event, but without adequate funding, proper staffing, and a visible and usable studio location, as well as returning control of all scheduling programming back to within Albany and not paying Schenectady $10,000 a year of taxpayer money, to do what was and should be again done within Albany with equipment purchase and staffing. Think of the possibilities with proper funding as this money is there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. No questions. Call the next speaker.
Anita Thayer.
Good evening. Anita Thayer, 122 Talmadge Place. I'm speaking tonight for Housing for All. Housing for All is an independent, unfunded organization that advocates for more affordable housing and tenant protections. Housing for All supports UTA's request for funding for a new vacancy study because of what we believe is a significant and fatal flaw in this city's 1028 rental vacancy study. In my testimony tonight, I will focus on just one very important concern that we have with the vacancy study, although we have other concerns as well. This body, the Albany Common Council, enacted legislation that required landlords in the city to have a satisfactory inspection done by code enforcement and receive an ROP prior to renting a residential unit or permitting occupancy. This has been a specific obligation of the law of landlords since this law was enacted on 6/21/2021, more than 3 years ago. The 2021 reform of the ROP process strengthened the underlying law, which has been on the city's books since the late 1960s. The city's apparent decision in the vacancy study to ignore the mandatory ROP requirement is disrespectful to this common council, disrespecting to law-abiding landlords, and disrespectful of concerned citizens who fought for this protection. Using publicly available records, UTA was able to determine that 187 of the so-called eligible units in the vacancy study do not have ROPs and therefore should not be marketed and cannot be legally rented. Applying the ROP law to a number of eligible units according to the vacancy study reduces the eligible units by 187, thereby also reducing the number of available rental units available by a comparable number. Ignoring the legal requirement of our ROP not only discourages disrespect of the law, but skews the resulting vacancy rate significantly. According to UTA, the best estimate of the resulting vacancy rate would then be less than 5%, and therefore give the council the opportunity to find a housing emergency. Housing for All requests that the vacancy study be redone by a day certain and that the vendor be instructed to verify that all eligible units have current and valid ROPs. And we ask the council to allocate the necessary funding in the 2025 city budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Nani and then Mr. Ballard.
Yeah, thank you. My question is, do you believe because of the timing of the study not being concluded by May 2024, when large, population of students are in our city, how were exemptions were issued and possibly that illegal rentals might have been included are enough to have a second look?
I think that's definitely a concern. I mean, I note it seems that the landlord could pick the date they determined whether they had vacancies or not. There was no date set by the city agency to say, do you have vacancies as of this date? Landlords completed the survey as of the date they chose to.
No further question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Thank you for taking your time to meet here and speak with us today. This is a state issue, and this was a policy that was passed statewide that allowed municipalities to go through this process. And I know we're not the first municipality to go through this process. Can you share with the body if there's been other municipalities that maybe found inconsistencies or questions regarding the original study that then went and moved forward with having a second look at a study? So has that happened in other municipalities in the state?
I know there have been other studies. I'm not fully familiar with each study, and I know that courts have intervened the governing body has intervened, and there have been at least 2 studies that have been redone.
Thank you. I think Kingston had multiple studies on the same subject. So, you know, I appreciate your information. I appreciate you coming down and speaking with us today.
I think it's interesting to note that the study that Albany did was over the longest time period of any study. And landlords have had continuing opportunities to complete their surveys and therefore could choose the vacancy date over an extended period of time.
Mr. Flynn has a question. Oh, sorry. Just saw that point. Adam?
Just a brief question. When this topic was being discussed earlier in the year, did your organization have any concerns with the neighborhood engagement services taking on this task? And if so, what were those concerns?
I mean, I don't believe Housing for All made a statement as to who should conduct the survey.
Thank you, that's all.
Thank you.
Do we have a copy of your comment?
Sure. I'm honored.
Francis McGuy.
Yeah.
Hi, Common Council. Francis McGuy. Do you want me to give my address or ward? Okay. Which? What's that, sorry? 2 Sprague Place, and Ward 6. Okay. So I'm here to speak on the same issue as Anita. I urge you to do everything you can to include the $125,000 necessary to redo the vacancy study in the 2025 budget. I think it's very important that we prioritize the most vulnerable members of our city, especially the tenants who need support because they don't have the kind of power and support through their own assets that landlords already have, right? So I really want to encourage that, and I also, like Anita was saying, wanted to mention that the timeline for the vacancy study was far too long, and some of the parts of it, especially, you know, given that we have so many students and lawmakers leaving for the summer, often leaves lots of apartments open and vacant, and that probably most likely led to an artificially high vacancy rate that was in the final study. So like Kingston did, we should go ahead, protect our most vulnerable residents, and redo the study, redo it properly, make sure everyone is protected. And it's only $26 per eligible renter, which I think is a very reasonable price to make sure that the proper protections are available for those who need it. Thank you.
Mer Sharma.
Good evening, Council. My name is Meeker. I live at 2 Sprague Place in Albany, and I'm a tenant organizer with United Tenants of Albany. I'm here today, as you all know, to advocate for $125,000 to fund an outsourced vacancy study with a clear timeline that counts legally rentable units. So best practice for vacancy studies have been to ensure that units counted in the studies are eligible rentable, and also marketed. If a unit is not marketed, how will I know it's available for rent, and how will I choose to occupy that unit? We know that units without residential occupancy permits were counted in this study. And a residential occupancy permit is supposed to indicate that a unit is up to code and habitable for a human being, right? So my question is, if the unit is not considered habitable for a person to live in, why are we counting that as eligible for a study that is supposed to determine if a property is vacant just by the nature of the housing market? Albany also took the longest of any upstate city, a concern that we've raised for a few months. How can you verify a vacancy reported in March all the way in August? And I also want to stress that 1 in 6 renters in the city of Albany are eligible for this. This is not a small impact. This is a huge amount of people, 1 in 6 renters. I was on a call this week and I mentioned this fact and one person chimed in and went, I'm eligible. There were 6 of us on this call. Statistics work. 1 in 6 renters are also severely rent burdened, which means that they're paying 50% or more of all of their income to rent alone. That's 1 in 6 renters in this city, Albany. You have the power to bring that relief to tenants, or at least offer a fair chance for tenants to get that relief that they need. When Kingston did their first study, they knew that their tenants were worth that investment, to try again and to do better. They did it. They got less than 5% on their second go of it, and they opted in. Those are the tenants that are in the process of getting money back from their landlords from all of that overcharge of rent during COVID and through gentrification from the city. Kingston believed in their tenants. Albany should too. $125,000 is only 0.056% of this proposed $222 million budget. Some departments in the city spend more on that on postage in a year. I know that rent-stabilized eligible tenants are worth that really meager amount. I would ask, do you think that tenants are worth $26 per eligible renter unit to save thousands of dollars of rent hikes in a year to keep those people that make our city run in the city of Albany doing what they do best? I think so. I think that's worth a drop in the bucket on this budget line. I want you to imagine that you're an immigrant and you're a PhD student moving to Albany to study, to raise your family. You have beautiful kids to feed while you're studying astronomical engineering to make our world a better place. You moved into your building because it was marketed for folks like you, immigrants and students, as affordable, as a safe, decent place to live. You come home after a long, grueling day of school to feed your family and are greeted by a $300 rent hike. That's $3,600 a year that you don't have. Now, your whole life, your school, your career, your family is at risk. This is the reality of real tenants at Danker Village who you have heard from before, who you have met, who you've taken a picture with. I want you to remember those tenants. Those are the ones that are at the front lines of this housing crisis, this manufactured housing crisis. These tenants got those rent hikes after the council passed good cause, in that month limbo where the mayor waited to sign it into law. Those tenants are vulnerable and at risk, and they have no course of action aside to organize with each other to fight those rent hikes. Rent stabilization will alleviate that burden for them. That Rent Guidelines Board would be able to set a look-back period that would cover the inflation, the huge unfair inflation that occurred during COVID, during the past few months, as landlords knew that the city was gearing up to opt into good cause and started hiking up rents. Rent stabilization is the only way for those tenants to undo those unjust rent hikes that they got. And it's $26 per tenant. Is that tenant worth $26 to stay, study, work, live, and build a life and a family in our city and do astronomical engineering that I cannot comprehend? I think so, and I really, really hope that you think so too.
Thank you. Ms. Frederick?
Thank you for your comments this evening. You mentioned that Kingston redid their study and came underneath the 5%. Do you know what their original percentage came to the first time around?
I don't know exactly over the top of my head, but but I believe it was definitely under 10%.
Okay, thank you.
Marlon Anderson.
Good evening, members of the public, members of the council. I am, of course, Marlon Anderson. For those of you who don't know, longtime community advocate in the city of Albany, former, maybe future candidate for mayor in the city of Albany, or maybe candidate for Gabrielle's seat. I haven't decided yet. I came to speak at public comment, but since the budget hearing was going on, I think since both my comments at public comment will affect the budget, I came to basically ask the members of the council in this meeting, given the past budgets that we have had in the last 12 years of the wonderful Sheehan administration, with the taxes going up and up on the residents and the burden being more and more placed on the homeowners of this city, I have came forward in this budget hearing to ask each and every one of you members of the council, before you go forward with your vote on the budget, have you examined this budget, and do you feel it is not a burden on those taxpayers? Do you feel, each one of you, have you searched the budget and searched your decision-making process to decide if this was a worthy budget, worthy of the citizens of Albany, that does not overtax and overburden them? Did you confer with a future candidate for mayor in the city of Albany who resides in the audits, the city auditor? Have you conferred with her and see if there's anything in the budget? Have you sat down with her and see if there's anything in the budget that could be trimmed or cut down that would save the city of Albany, the residents of the city of Albany? Because again, as we are all very familiar with, who have been in this process, who have been in this building, the last few budgets that we can go down the line have failed the residents of the city of Albany and has put an excessive burden on them that they should not have had. And every office in this building bears responsibility to that. This office, the mayor's office, the city auditor's office. And as this process goes forward, that should be taken into account by those residents who will soon be voters in the city of Albany. And that should be pointed out, and it may be pointed out. But my question to you is, have each of you, as representatives of the city of Albany, as representative of the homeowners and residents of the city of Albany, have you went over this budget with a fine-tooth comb, knowing that you have in the last few budgets passed on excessive costs to the homeowners and residents of the city of Albany, while we have been losing revenue sources in the city of Albany? Have you went over this budget with the fine-tooth comb that is needed to ensure that that burden is lessened as much as possible? Because again, right now, that is the engine that is driving this city, the homeowner and the resident. And it is your duty, when you are putting forth this budget, when you sign off on this budget, when you pass this budget down to Mayor Sheehan's office for signature, to ensure that you've done everything you can for the people that you represent, to ensure that they are not excessively burdened by this budget. So that is my question to you.
Thank you.
Very, very welcome.
Questions? No questions. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Very, very welcome.
That is the last person signed up for public comment, public hearing tonight. So this public hearing is closed. And we're moving on to Mr. Kimbrough, a motion.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Motion to take resolution 124, 111, 24 out of order. It's an MC, so it has to be MC. So.
Yeah, first, but we take it out of order first. Is there a second on this?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Now, Mr. Kimbrough.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to add resolution 124, 111, 24R by majority consent.
Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Ms. Fredericks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I noticed Resolution 124, 111, 24R via majority consent and ask for its passage via roll call vote.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
A resolution of the Common Council in recognition of the Capital Region Black Health and Wellness Exposition hosted by Victoria Fitness.
Discussion on this resolution. Ms. Frederick?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for taking it out of order this evening. Tonight we are joined by Tehran Victoria and Tyler Victoria, joining us as part of Victoria Fitness. Victoria Fitness is a staple in our community that serves over 150 clients towards achieving their best health outcomes, both physically and mentally, including approximately 40 to 50 youth. And some exciting news, they are hosting the first Black Health and Wellness Expo at the Albany Cap Center this upcoming, 2 weeks from now, upcoming Saturday, November 16th. That exposition is going to focus on bringing Black, Indigenous, and people of color vendors, over I think 25 to 30 vendors, to the CAP Center. There's going to be fitness classes, motivational speakers, and various instruction on how you can connect both your mental health and your physical health together. And so for this evening, we want to recognize them. We want to thank them for bringing this to Albany, and we wish them the best of luck with their event. I know it's going to be a wonderful turnout, and you guys are going to do great things. So with that, I do ask for my council's support in passing this resolution tonight.
Thank you. Further, Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a pleasure to sit and listen to this resolution because I've watched these two young men grow up. You know, Tehran was both of them were good basketball players, but I followed Tehran a little bit closer as he played for McGinn. And so, you know, we have youth in our city that are doing things to, you know, not only make ways for themselves, but also help people. One of our good friends say, your health is your wealth. Don't put your health on the shelf. And we just got to make sure that we put the spotlight on them for what they're doing. And I'm excited, and I hope to participate. And I just know that I watch through Facebook, and I see a lot of the young, they have a lot of the youth that are athletes going in there and putting in work. And it's just a beautiful thing to see. So I'm excited as I sit here and I see him get recognized for doing what he loves. If everybody knows Tyron, he takes care of his body. You know, the person that's a fitness person, you got to look the part, and he definitely does that. And so I'm excited to be here tonight to celebrate him. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Anani.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank the sponsor for introducing this resolution. And, you know, it's not easy owning a Black business here in the Capital Region. And I just want to tip my hat off to you guys, especially the amount of success that you have received so far in your early stages of opening your business. So, again, I just want to commend you and tip my hat off. And, you know, you have our full support. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, can the clerk please call the roll?
Adams.
Yes, co-sponsor.
Anani.
Sponsor, please.
Vallerin.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Clark.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Farrow.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Flynn.
Yes, co-sponsor.
Frederick.
Yes.
Hoey.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Johnson.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Keegan.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Kimbrough.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Robinson.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
12 in the affirmative.
Resolution passes. Yeah, I have a... Oh. All right, returning to regularly scheduled program. We have next our public comment period. You'll have 4 minutes to comment on any subject you wish. Unlike the public hearing, the common council members cannot ask you questions, and they cannot say anything after your comments. If they choose to do so, they will do so at a later time during the agenda. You come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and the light comes on green means go, or start your comments, and yellow means you have 1 minute remaining, and red means conclude your comments. With that being said, can the clerk please call the first speaker for the public comment period?
Janet Dwyer Saltzman.
Good evening. I am Janet Dwyer Stutzman at 226 Euclid Avenue, Albany. I am here due to the sudden appearance of 4 speed bumps on Euclid Avenue where I live. In discussions with neighbors, it became evident that everyone was surprised and confused by their installation. We already have 4 stop signs on these 2 blocks of Euclid. Speed bumps should be redundant. Consider the fact that they have doubled the traffic noise because every vehicle, be it a sedan or a pickup pulling a trailer or a DGS behemoth, reacts audibly with the speed bumps, from quiet bumps to loud clangs to squealing brakes to startling booms. Buses creep across so as not to injure unaware children. As most cars reaccelerate after crossing the bump, I fear our air quality will be impacted also. Neighbors have expressed concerns regarding snow plowing in the winter. To impact a neighborhood's quality of living so significantly is important to me, as it increases everyone's anxiety, frustration, and anger. What is the point of this heavy-handed decision to build 4 speed bumps? I drive in Schenectady, Troy, Colony, Niskayuna. They do not use speed bumps like this. I recently drove crosstown from Central Avenue to New Scotland Avenue using Albany's smaller side streets. 4 of them had speed bumps, and I understand that the city is just getting started. It makes sense when there is a playground or school adjacent to the street, but surely not on quiet Eileen Street. Albany has been encouraging people to get out of their cars and use bikes. Over the weekend, I watched the unhappy reactions of bicyclists as they first realized that Euclid now has multiple speed bumps. I do not doubt I will no longer be able to bicycle up Euclid's Hill with a speed bump to Conquer just below the apex. To drive or bike in Albany is now punishing. That seems to be the city's intention, not to govern everyone, but to punish everyone. as if to say, we know some of you are speeding, so all of you are going to pay the consequences. How is this reasonable governing? These controls seem excessive as is, but there is a plan to reduce Albany's driving speed to 25 miles per hour. Why do you need speed bumps too? Why even go to the expense of changing the speed limit when it's been proven 3 times in my memory that lowering the speed limit doesn't work without reasonable police enforcement? And frankly, if one can't drive safely at 30 miles per hour, one should be required to take refresher driving courses. The same should be mandated for drivers with multiple traffic infractions. This could solve many of these issues. There is a dangerous lack of oversight of driving skills in New York State. In addition to the speed bumps, the city will be courting nearly every car that is driving around the city of Albany. This is an uncomfortable reality on the eve of this particular election, and especially so for someone who grew up in J. Edgar Hoover's shadow. Wouldn't he have had a field day in Albany? These are negative, painful changes to contemplate. For over 20 years, we have been told from both Mayor Jennings and Mayor Sheehan that Albany's police force is too short-handed to target just the guilty drivers with a traditional speeding ticket and subsequent license impact. Why is this problem so unsolvable for Albany? We want our city to grow, but these punitive practices might very well discourage people from choosing Albany as their home. I think we could turn around Albany's current approach to governing by adding more respect and understanding for its residents. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Clerk, please call the next speaker.
Gwen Pope.
Good evening. My name is Gwen Pope. My address is 952 East Pine Hill Drive. I'm honored to serve as the president, the first vice president of the Albany chapter of the NAACP and coordinator of the unit's Afro-Academic, Cultural, Technological, Scientific Olympics program, otherwise known as AXA. I appreciate the opportunity to address you tonight and speak in support of Spectrum as a valued corporate partner with our organization. The NAACP has a long-standing commitment to advancing equity, inclusion, and justice, particularly for marginalized communities. In our mission, we rely not only on grassroots efforts, but also on strong partnerships with corporations that share our vision. Spectrum has consistently demonstrated this commitment, supporting programs and initiatives that uplift and empower the communities we serve. Through this partnership, Spectrum has supported our Youth Council mentoring program, along with the Council's Intergenerational Technology program. They've sponsored our Health Expo and supported our relaunch of the AXO program. The AXO program is a year-long youth achievement enrichment program designed to encourage high academic and cultural achievement among high school students of African descent. This support is not just financial. It's a meaningful investment in our community's growth and development. They have shown a willingness to listen to our community's needs and take actionable steps to make a real difference. We look forward to continuing this partnership and expanding our work together in ways that benefit Albany and beyond. I urge the Council to recognize the positive impact that Spectrum has made in our community and consider their corporate philanthropy as you contemplate renewal of their cable TV franchise agreement. We appreciate the support of Spectrum and efforts like theirs that encourage more companies to follow their example. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk, call the next speaker.
Jackie Powell.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jackie Powell. I reside at 14 Albany Street in Albany, New York. I'm here to ask for help for my community. A young man from Albany, Amit Nixon, is dead. He died in the correction facility, Fishkill. It's a whole community hurting. His mother reside in Arbor Hill. His father live in North Albany. His kids and cousins live in the South End. We buried our Meek Friday. He leave behind 6 kids, brothers, cousins. His mother buried him and got his death certificate saying that it's undetermined. They don't know what happened. It's still being investigated. That's all the answers that she got. No mother, son, daughters, family members should have to bury their child without knowing what happened. They giving his family the runaround. I'm here tonight because I looked up what is a common counselor supposed to do. It says you're here to protect the people in your community, help them get the best laws. I'm here to just ask, please help that mother get answers. And his family, his kids, his nieces, his nephew, they're hurting and they need your help. That's the only reason I'm here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can the clerk call the next speaker?
Tyrone Murphy.
Good evening. My name is Tyrone Murphy. I reside at 270 North Pearl Street. I'm here to ask a question today of this esteemed council. The question that I have to ask or propose to this council is this: does this council have straightforward or discretionary authority to request that an inquiry be conducted into the New York State Department of Corrections, as to the deaths, the assaults of inmates that are being housed in particular facilities? To piggyback off of what the sister was just speaking about, Amit Nixon, the mother couldn't make it tonight. Her name is Lori Nixon, because she is so distraught about her son's death. I want to tell you a story. And in telling you this story, you might say that it's far-fetched, but it is what it is, and it can be factually substantiated. On the 20th of this month, I was contacted by Lori Willis, my cousins, stating that my cousin, who was incarcerated at the Fishkill Correctional Facility, Amit Nixon, was having problems with continuing medical assistance for a cut he had sustained at the Green Correctional Facility on September the 28th. From the 20th to the 22nd, we were in contact. Actually, we went out to the New York State Department of Correction. We're told that there's no more public access. They gave us a card with a number on it and told us to call it. We called the number. We called the facility. We called also, it's a agency or department within the New York State Department of Correction that deal with health, and they monitor inmate health. We called them. We called the facility chaplain. We spoke to the watch commander. We spoke to the deputy superintendent of security, have the name, dates, and times of all of this, concerning his well-being. In other words, we were doing what is called traditionally a welfare check, because we understand he was having problems. Lo and behold, on October the 23rd at 7:43 p.m., he was pronounced dead. Initially, they told the family he was pronounced dead of a heart attack. Today, we just got the medical examiner's report, and it says Cause of death after the autopsy, unknown, still pending. I have before you that I want to submit to you a news media outlet collection of the atrocity that's been occurring within the New York State Department of Corrections for some time. In particular at the Fishkill Correctional Facilities. I have a 125-page report that has been assembled by the New York State Correction Association, which outlines the horrendous abuses that has taken place at a medium security facility in Lower Region, New York, which is astonishing to me as an African American, because I know for a fact that Fishkill, Sing Sing, Green Haven is highly populated by people of color. All of these incidents, as you will see in these reports, take place from 6 to 7 o'clock p.m. at night, the night shift. It's been reported to me also that when they come in wearing black gloves and even determining and predetermining what inmate they're going to assault. An inmate reached out to my cousin Lori and told her, do not believe whatever correction officials tell you. Why? Because they took him out of his cell. I heard like something being thumped going down the stairs, and he never came back.
Sir, your time is up. Thank you.
I'm speaking about Amit Nixon, my cousin, all right, who just became deceased on the 23rd, like I said, of this month.
Thank you, sir. Your time is up, sir. Thank you.
Do you have that power and authority?
No, we do not. But thank you for your comments. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Marlon Anderson.
Good evening once again. I guess I have to reintroduce myself. My name is Marlon Anderson, community advocate in the city of Albany. Again, possible candidate for some office in the city of Albany. Haven't decided which seat I want to go after, or if I'm going to go after. I came down to speak originally at the public comment period, and this can piggyback off of my comments in the budget hearing. But originally I came down to talk about progress. I've been monitoring and speaking to individuals in the community about the progress on the cabaret process. I haven't heard too much, so I'm just curious and wondering what, if anything, is the progress, because I know that in my experience in this office, progress is very, very slow. And especially during election time, with elections being a priority to elected officials, when the business of the city should always take priority. So I hope there is a progress on that front, because again, how long does it take to draft an amendment, which is basically what's needed here. It's just a basic amendment of the existing legislation to relieve the onerousness of the bill. So how long does it take to do an amendment? But what I was calling, what I say goes on the back of the budgetary process, is what actions, or if there's any actions, is being done to address the continuing loss of revenue generating things that happen in this city. I had a discussion with a resident in the community of things that we lost. For instance, the horrible decision to not do lights in the park, which was a massive revenue generating stream, because when people went through the charity event, they would come out to the city and they would frequent the restaurants in the city. And I mean, we had virtually hundreds of people coming in the city on a daily basis, and that revenue is gone. Revenue that could go to a city that desperately needs it. And then we were speaking about other things. The loss of Lark Fest, which brought a massive surge of revenue into the city every year. Massive surge. Basically the biggest surge of revenue in the city. And that's been going for years. But I haven't heard anybody in the city address the loss of these revenue streams or anything of that was going on. But yet we're passing budgets with tax increases. So how is that serving the residents of the city of Albany when we're losing revenue streams, not addressing the loss of these revenue streams, but yet we're glad-handing and passing every budget that's placed before you, and every budget that's been placed before you has come with a tax increase. And that's something that this body needs to address, and it needs to be spoken upon as we enter election season for the city and city offices. Albany needs progress on many fronts, but that's just some of the progress that I wanted to address. I hope to hear something about the cabaret law. If you have any information, one of you guys, chat me or wherever, just let me know what's going on, because again, how hard is it to do an amendment? You guys have a great evening.
Thank you, sir. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Bree Morrison.
Good evening, Common Council. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear all of us out tonight. My name is Brianne, and I'm here today as a volunteer with United Tenants and also a tenant. I'm a member of Ward 6. I live at 366 Madison Avenue. I'm here because we are encouraging you to make space in the budget for a new vacancy study. We appreciate that you allocated space for the first study, but unfortunately, as Mihir so beautifully put earlier, it's not great. It's not great, It's a first draft, but that's exactly it. It's a first draft. And so we're hoping to get the space for the funding to get the study done again, done by a third party, to make sure that we can get as accurate information as possible. We need rent stability because rents are going to continue to rise. I moved to Albany in 2009, and when I was living from 2009 until 2017. In that space of time, I was sharing a 4-bedroom with 3 other girls, and altogether it was $1,200 for a 4-bedroom apartment, and that was in 2010. In 2015 to 2017, I was paying $775 for a 2-bedroom, and that was like split between 2 people right in Center Square. And then the year after that, I paid $900 for a 2-bedroom, also split between 2 people. And that was right down by the plaza, so really great main locations. And now you'll be very tough to find even a studio or a 1-bedroom that is under $1,000. 1 in 6 renters would be impacted by rent stabilization. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll count. She's not here. She's not here. 6. So that's a lot of people, and that's, I think, in the interest of everybody. And as Mihir said, the $125,000 is 0.0056% of the total budget. We're not like reaching for the moon here. I think we're being very reasonable, and it's something small that can make a really big impact. It is about $26 per tenant. So for less than the price of a lobster roll at Albany Ale and Oyster, for less than the price of steak frites at Wellington's, for less than homemade ravioli at Cafe Capriccio, for less than 2 breakfast burritos from Skinny Pancake, for less than a box of Joe from Dunkin' Donuts, we can make a really big impact for tenants in the city of Albany. We need protections. The rents are going to continue to rise, and I hope that you can continue to support tenants and get the money allocated for a new study. Thank you so much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Clerk, please call the next speaker.
Keith Irish.
Good evening, again, members of the Common Council present, members of the public, and others. My name is Keith Irish, a longtime resident of Albany, mostly in the 9th Ward. I'm here to comment on a resolution on tonight's agenda, Resolution 102-9224R, the possible voting on the new proposed Spectrum Charter Cable Franchise Agreement. This agreement for Spectrum is to provide services to the resident of Albany for the next 10 years. The last one was agreed to under the Mayor Jennings administration. That one was an extremely poorly written one for the benefit of Time Warner Cable and not the city of Albany. This one being proposed is much better, but still has a few important minor items that are not included or not clearly stated in the document. I attended the recent meetings on this resolution where most of you did not, so you did not hear firsthand the issues I brought up and issues the organization that the city hired to do some of the talks with Spectrum. A representative from that company attended via virtual means and for the most part agreed and commented on the points I brought up. I made a few other minor ones to him directly via email after the meeting, to which he stated he would address them and advise the Corporation Council. To my knowledge, these issues and points have not been included yet, and they require time to be worked out and updated. Because of these reasons and actions, I strongly recommend that you postpone the voting on this resolution later tonight. This agreement must have another go-around to fix these minor points, otherwise the residents of Albany and you will have to live with the agreement for at least 10 years. And I don't think you want to have a legacy that is not right. You must not vote on this resolution tonight, or it must be voted no by at least 8 of you so it doesn't pass. Again, this is a vast improvement, but we have to think the best we can 10 years in the future. Look what's changed in just the last 10 years and how that could have been utilized because of the previously poorly written one. I had a list of specific items that I presented after actually reading the draft of the agreement, and they all need to be considered for the benefit of all Albany citizens and for your use as well, while providing info to your fellow citizens. Please vote no tonight or remove the vote from the agenda. Thank you for your time on this matter.
Can the clerk call next speaker?
Julia Long.
Good evening. Thank you all for allowing me to be here. My name is Julia Long. I reside at 24 Center Street. I am the Vice President of the North Albany Neighborhood Association, and I'm a candidate for New York State Assembly as a write-in. So if you haven't yet voted, write my name in. But I'm not here for that. I'm here because I'm so happy to see the folks from United Tenants. My day job, I provide legal assistance to tenants in housing court. So I do hope that you could do something with the rent in the budget. But I'm here because the statistics show in 2023 that 38% of the people in prison were from New York City, 62% from upstate, Albany is the #1 incarceration rate in the state. And so my son is currently incarcerated, and I was so happy that he got a proximity transfer. I have custody of my grandson. Proximity transfer means you can be close to home so you can be with your children and your loved ones. And so last Monday, my son was assaulted by a correctional officer at Caucus Correctional Facility. And, so I'm here because I hope that in the budget, our citizens, residents, voters from Albany are going to prison, and there's no oversight. I used to work at the state senate. I wrote the bill on proximity, close to home transfer, when I was working for Senator Montgomery. I know how important it is for families. So I know to call the assistant commissioner, and I know all to do all these things. But there's something missing where we don't have a voice here in the city of Albany who sends more people to prison than any other city in the state. And I'm hoping that in the budget, you folks will make some room for some type of oversight or an investigative body that could speak on behalf of the citizens here to inquire about what's happening in the state prisons where our children, our loved ones are being beaten and murdered. 98% of people who are in prison will come home one day. And we want these folks to be productive citizens of society. We want them to learn the skills and trades so that they can come home and care for their dependent children, not be a burden on society. And so I'm hoping that the state budget gives money for renters and people who provide assistance to them like me. But I'm here because I'm looking for some help with what's going on in the state prisons with our citizens from right here in Albany. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kimbrough, we reached the 30-minute mark. Can we have a few more, a couple more people?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to extend public comment, 30 minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Can we call next speaker?
Bebin Francis.
Hello, my name is Bevan Francis. I live at 57 Garden Street. I'm a constituent of the esteemed Sergio Adams. I brought today a UTA newsletter from 1984, guys. This is a 40-year-old newspaper printed by UTA, and I picked out a couple passages from this 40-year-old newspaper that I wanted to share with you. Let's see, where is it? Hold on, bear with me. Rent regulation, still an uphill climb. After several years of actively supporting rent regulation in Albany, we made slow but steady progress. Suddenly, Albany's rent regulation bill is in limbo. The foot in the door theory. The mayor fears that once we get the minimal protections offered by the Emergency Tenant Protection Act, we'll keep coming back for more. Well, of course we will. There's no surprise to the mayor. We've openly expressed our desire to strengthen the ETPA. For example, the ETPA was written to cover New York City and only includes buildings of 6 or more units. We'd like that changed to cover smaller buildings owned by landlords with 6 or more units in total. Mayor Whalen isn't or wasn't listening or making excuses. The favored investor theory. The mayor claims that the rent regulation will discourage investment in downtown and that it will hurt the tax base of the city. It's the old trickle-down theory, Democratic style. This fear ignores that many neighborhoods in New York and other cities with rent regulation that have remained strong and healthy. There are also many areas suffering from disinvestment and loss of tax base where there was never been any rent regulation. Obviously, there are many factors at work in a local housing market. Rent regulation has no connection to these problems. We're calling on the mayor to do something about this rent squeeze before it tightens any more. Support ETPA enabling legislation for Albany. We need a meaningful local debate on this issue. It can't happen while the issue is held at bay in the state legislature. Support strengthening amendments that make ETPA more applicable to Albany. This points out the one-sidedness of our current system. An unreasonable tenant gets evicted, but an unreasonable landlord gets rewarded. We need to level the scales of justice. Institute a rent guidelines board. This would be set up as a voluntarily appeal process which would review a landlord's request rent hike. This arena would not be a binding authority, but it would accomplish several goals. If the mayor sees no problem with rent, then he mustn't be looking very carefully. A public review process could be an eye-opener for those who are unaware of the problems. And so much from this article 40 years later is very applicable to today. And while I still have a minute left, I'd like to just say that rent is too high. I get calls from our hotline at United Tenants of Albany who've gotten $300, $400, and $5 rent increases. And it just takes one emergency that can lead you into a housing crisis. I had emergency surgery and I was out of work for 3 weeks. Thankfully, for the support of my family and friends and coworkers at United Tenants, I didn't have to worry about my rent. But 3 weeks out of work could easily put someone into a housing crisis or even homelessness. And finally, in my last 30 seconds, I'd like to say that I sit in solidarity with my fellow community members who are speaking on the issue of incarceration. I hope that this council finds some way to support these community members. Violence inside prison facilities is a real issue. We need to end qualified immunity so that public officials like COs in prisons cannot just harm people, kill people without any kind of oversight or any kind of, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Clerk, call next speaker.
Krista Edroy.
Do I press the button? Good evening. My name is Krista Edroy. I reside at 98 Columbia Street, and I am a member of the 3rd Ward. I am the core advocate at the United Tenants of Albany, and I am here to urge the Common Council tonight to allocate $125,000 in the budget for the redo of the rent control study outsourced. This Common Council was successful at passing good cause eviction, so we know you see the housing crisis in Albany, and we see you working with us to make the city of Albany more livable for tenants. Fair market rent for a studio is $1,074 in 2025, for 2025 fair market rent. A lot of studio units are going for $1,100, $1,200, sometimes even $1,500. The argument seems to be it's fair market rent. Although the unit is fair market rent, oftentimes the conditions of the unit that are ETPA eligible, such as the Anchor Village apartments, are not market rent worthy. There are a couple of considerations or aspects of the study which raise question marks. When navigating through the study and analyzing its accuracy, time and social context are major factors that have been taken into consideration when doing the rent control study. The study took the longest out of all the studies done in the neighboring cities that opted into ETPA and extended around a time when students renting apartments mostly downtown move back home during summer break, potentially increasing vacancies superficially. This would not be an accurate reflection of those units, which are actually not vacant for most of the year outside of summer break. The study did not take into consideration valid residential occupancy permits, which give the ability to a landlord to collect rent and rent the apartment out and bring an eviction case against the tenant in court. Without a valid ROP, landlords do not have jurisdiction in a courthouse. Another question that I asked myself is, out of all of these units that are vacant, how many units are listed on Zillow, Apartments.com, or even Facebook Marketplace for rent? We see the increase in evictions and the increase in homelessness. Tenants I assist in court set move-out dates, oftentimes in fear of being able to find an apartment that is affordable. Landlords will continue setting superficial requirements, such as 3 times the income compared to rent and 650, 700 credit scores to determine whether or not tenants will be able to afford the rent next month. So shouldn't that payment at least be fair if we're going to jump through loopholes for somewhere to rest our heads at night? What about the tenants on fixed incomes? Where do they go? The families facing eviction in this very courthouse each morning, families receiving minimum wage on SSI, on disability, and have been on the Albany Housing Authority and Section 8 wait list for years. Where do they go? What organizations do they reach out to? The reality of the situation is you most likely won't get help if your rent is not affordable. The question remains, if all of these units are vacant and there is also such a need for apartments, then what prevents these apartments from being rented out? Their lack of affordability and the conditions of the units that ultimately do not reflect the price being paid. We owe it to the tenants of Albany to opt into ETPA. Thank you.
Call the next speaker.
Sarah.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Chaudhry. I am 20 years old. I live in 141 J Street in the 6th Ward of Albany. I've been a tenant in the Capital District for more than 2 years and a tenant in Albany for a year and a half. To be clear, despite being a student, I am local and live in Albany all year round. I am one of the 1 in 6 Albany renters who would have been eligible for ETPA, and I was actually the person in the call that her mentioned earlier. I am speaking in support of the $125,000 a year, the $125,000 in the city budget for an outsourced vacancy study. I like my current landlord and am grateful for them, but just because I have a nice landlord does not mean that I don't need the ETPA. I deserve protection if my home is bought by a new owner who isn't as reasonable and compassionate as my current landlord. And regardless, I faced a rent increase this year due to inflation. I have a job and I can afford it, but I feel the inflation. I work full-time in a blue-collar job, even as a college student and even with work-caused injuries. So I've always been able to pay rent at the end of the month, but I feel it when my rent rises higher and faster than my wage. During the semesters, I pay at least half of my monthly earnings in rent. I make $5 more than minimum wage. I work full-time, and when I'm off school, I sometimes work overtime. I'm an essential worker who works through holidays, through physical pain, through finals weeks at school, and I live to work, basically. I've had raises at work even. My rent is considered affordable even in my gentrified neighborhood, yet I am rent burdened. So yes, I do need ETPA and therefore this outsourced vacancy study. Because the least I deserve as a worker and as a taxpayer and even as a survivor of abuse is to not be anxious about losing my basic right to shelter that is safe, that is comfortable, and that is affordable. Housing rights, which is the core issue of the vacancy study, is a human right, and we all deserve it. That should not be thrown away because of the flawed methodology of the vacancy study, which included units without ROPs to inflate the data in the landlord class's favor and against working class tenants. They are an open secret, but that does not mean they should be accepted by the city. So please give us the timely, thorough, and unbiased vacancy study we need and deserve. That does not continue to reward illegal, unsafe properties, and that does not wait for the summer turnover. I'm asking you to please use a 0.056 drop in the budget for us, the workers who make this city and state function, the taxpayers burdened to pay for this city and state. I'm asking you to invest the $26 per household in me as the present and future of the city and state. Because this is not a small issue, as Mayor Sheehan suggests, our lives are on the line. Thank you for listening to me tonight. And I urge you to keep listening to tenants like me, and I hope you'll turn my words into action. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That is the last speaker signed up for tonight's public comment. comment period is closed. Moving on to approval of minutes from previous meeting. Mr. Kimbrough.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer the October 21st of 2024 meeting minutes for approval.
Second.
Second, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Consideration of local laws, Mr. Anani.
Thank you, Mr. President. I noticed local law L of 2024 and ask for its introduction.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the local law?
A local law amending Article I, employee residency requirement of Chapter 62, labor of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to re-broadening the employee residency requirement.
Thank you, Mr. Kimbrough.
Thank you, Mr. President. A referral to the council's law committee.
Thank you. Now moving on to consideration, reports of committees. Any reports of any committees? Ms. Frederick.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance Committee has had a number of meetings on the proposed fiscal year 2025 budget, including our meetings last week. We had meetings on Tuesday and Wednesday of last week to discuss finance. At this point in time, we received all of our department presentations, and we are now in deliberation. We also are going through our bond ordinances. Our next meetings of the Finance Committee will be this upcoming Wednesday, November 6th at 5:30 here at City Hall, as well as the following Wednesday, November 13th, same time, City Hall. The plan there is to, again, come to consensus on what we are proposing for the budget intent memo and any amendments, and we will then be voting on the budget at our next council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ballerin.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Planning Committee met on October 28th. We moved forward with the 2 reappointments for our Sustainability Committee that are before you today, Resolution 9391-94R and 9491-24R. The vote moved with a positive recommendation with unanimous consent, as well as the franchise agreement, which is Resolution 10292-24R. Again, all of those passed with unanimous consent after some good conversation, and I appreciate all the members for staying a long night that day.
Thank you, Mr. Ballerin. Seeing no more reports of standing committees, we'll move on to consideration of ordinances. Mr. Ballerin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that Ordinance 65-111-24 be introduced.
Can the clerk please read the ordinance?
An ordinance amending Chapter 375, Unified Sustainable Development Ordinance of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to requirements for signs.
Mr. Kimbrough? Ms. Kimbrough, on the introduction of 65-111-24.
Oh, sorry about that.
No problem.
Referral to the council's planning committee.
Thank you. Continue on with ordinance introductions. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice ordinance 66.11.24, and I ask for its introduction.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the ordinance?
An ordinance amending Chapter 375, Unified Sustainable Development Ordinance of the Code of the City of Albany by changing the zoning classification of parcels known as 31 Trinity Place from residential townhouse RT to mixed-use neighborhood edge MUNE and amending the zoning map accordingly.
Thank you. Mr. Kimbrough.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's also a referral to the council's planning committee.
Thank you. Moving on to ordinances held. We have an amendment, Mr. Adams.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to notice ordinance 1753-24 as amended on everyone's desk for everyone to look at.
Can you please read it for the council members? Thank you.
An ordinance amending Part 3, cabarets of Chapter 111, amusements, Part 35, Board of Zoning Appeals of Chapter 42, departments and commissions of Chapter 375, Unified Sustainable Development Ordinance of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to revising requirements for cabaret and accessory entertainment.
Why would y'all give me something like this?
Point of clarification, it's just because all the council members look puzzled.
Then something they
This is
haven't
just an
seen.
amendment that we came up with. We're not voting on anything. It's just a procedure thing.
So this is going to be, council members, since y'all do have, you're gonna have another committee meeting on this. Y'all will look at this amendment. It didn't need to be amended tonight. Because you have another committee meeting. They could bring that to the committee meeting and amend it. Thank you. Moving forward, strike that. Ordinance, continuing on, ordinance held, Ms. Fredericks.
We are holding bond ordinances until we pass the city budget, or vote on the city budget.
Oh, we're holding, okay. Okay, it's on my, sorry, it's on my to-do list. I was wondering the same thing. But, okay. Mr. Kimbrough, we're done with ordinances.
Thank you, Mr. President. The rest of the ordinances on the agenda are held.
Thank you. Can we now moving on to resolutions introduced? Ms. Keegan.
I notice resolution 122, 111, 24R, and ask for its passage via roll call.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
A resolution of the Common Council in recognition of Native American Heritage Month.
Discussion on this resolution. Ms. Keegan.
I will try to keep it relatively brief, but November is always recognized as Native American Heritage Month, and it is a time to acknowledge the contributions that our First Nations peoples have made to our society. Without Indigenous Americans, we would not have chocolate, coffee, mashed potatoes, or tomato sauce. Their impact is not just on our diet and the many foods that we consider to be traditional to Europe. Numerous medical advances, including syringes, birth control, analgesics, mouthwash, and topical pain relievers, are directly attributed to Indigenous medical practices. We can also thank them for introducing us to rubber, snow goggles, kayaks, snowshoes, baby bottles, raised bed agriculture, cable suspension bridges, and hammocks, just to name a few. The Iroquois Federation and their model of governance substantially impacted the creation of the United States and the development of the American Republic, the model of government under which we stand. As we join friends and families this year in celebration of Thanksgiving, a holiday that in modern times has often dehumanized and infantilized our Native peoples while omitting its true historical significance to the United States. Let us give thanks to the contributions that Indigenous culture has made to our table and to our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, since you're all co-sponsors on this will be a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution passes. Continuing on, resolution introduced. Ms. Frederick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice resolution 123, 111, 24R, and ask for its introduction.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
A resolution of the Common Council outlining its actions and expressing its findings and intent considering the City of Albany 2025 budget as proposed in Ordinance 28-101-24.
Thank you. Mr. Kimbrough.
Thank you, Mr. President. Referral to the Council's Finance Committee.
Thank you. Continuing on, that's it. Resolutions held. Moving on to resolutions held, Ms. Frederick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice Resolution 828124R and ask for its introduction.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
A resolution of the Common Council approving a transfer of budget funds and a change in the authorized positions included in the 2024 city budget, which will affect a salary rate or salary total.
Why is this under, we're not moving this. Why is this under consideration? We're not moving this. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Moving on. Mr. Ballerin, resolutions held.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that Resolution 93, 91, 94R be brought for a vote.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
A resolution of the Common Council reappointing Tina Lieberman as a member of the Sustainability Commission.
Discussion on this resolution. Mr. Ballerin.
Thank you, Mr. President. This resolution and the next resolution, again, a reappointment to the Sustainability Committee. Both, went through the Planning Committee and passed with unanimous consent, and we hope for their support here today.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, can the clerk please call the roll?
Adams.
Yes.
Anani.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Ballerin.
Yes.
Clark.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Farrow.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Flynn.
Yes, co-sponsor.
Frederick.
Yes, co-sponsor.
Hoey.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Johnson.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Keegan.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Kimbrough.
Yes, co-sponsored, please.
Robinson.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
12 in the affirmative.
Resolution passes. Mr. Ballerin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask the Resolution 94, 91, 24 be read and put forth for a vote.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
A resolution of the Common Council reappointing Gabriela Sabata Mora as a member of the Sustainability Commission.
Thank you. Discussion on this? Seeing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Adams.
Yes.
Anani.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Ballerin.
Yes.
Clark.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Farrow.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Flynn.
Yes, co-sponsor.
Frederick.
Yes, co-sponsor.
Hoey.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Johnson.
Yes.
Keegan.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Kimbrough.
Yes, co-sponsored, please.
Robinson.
Yes, co-sponsor.
12 in the affirmative.
Resolution passes. Mr. Ballerin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that Resolution 10292 24R be moved forward for a vote.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
A resolution of the Common Council authorizing the execution of a franchise agreement with Spectrum Northeast LLC.
Discussion on this resolution. Mr. Ballerin.
Thank you, Mr. President. So let me start with, so there's a lot of misinformation that sometimes residents have about this franchise agreement. The franchise agreement does not limit any other company from coming and working or providing this service to our city. I know the council has actually reached out in my tenure here to different providers to see if we can bring multiple providers, and have been told that's not part of the other company's business plan. The franchise agreement does not have anything to do with internet service. It has to do specifically with cable TV, and it's specifically focused on television, not internet services. I think that's very clear for us to put out there, because I think there is some misinformation about, or misunderstanding about what the franchise agreement actually does. What it does, it brings in about $1 million worth of revenue to our city by having this agreement. Part of our conversation on the 28th was that there's been a significant drop in the number of people who are subscribing to cable television over the last 10 years, which has impacted, hasn't impacted what we actually bring in, but it has impacted the fact that it actually having a longer term contract actually benefits the city at this point based on our drop in service by residents. I am very appreciative to the comments that were made by Mr. Irish. I think many of those concerns we were assured would be addressed in the final version from the outside counsel that was brought in to negotiate this contract. Some of the concerns that were brought up, just so that full council knows, some of the concerns that were brought up was that there was some misspellings that needed to be corrected, some of the addresses needed to be updated, and for me, the strongest one was that the language says that our HD channel would go into effect when the city requested it, and rightly so. You know, the concern from the public was that it should go from day one, and we asked that question specifically to the outside counsel, and he said that that's their intention. Their intention is to ask for that HD channel to go in effect as soon as the contract goes into effect. There'll be a little bit of lag time, but the request is going to go in for day one. Again, this passed through the body with unanimous consent, and I hope it has your support here today. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, can the clerk please call the roll?
Adams.
Yes.
Anani.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Ballerin.
Yes.
Clark.
Yes, co-sponsor.
Farrell.
Yes.
Flynn.
Yes, co-sponsor.
Frederick.
Yes.
Hoey.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Keegan.
Yes.
Kimbrough.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
12 in the affirmative.
Resolution passes. Mr. Kimbrough, that's all we have for resolutions.
Thank you, sir. Rest of the resolutions on the agenda are held.
Thank you. Moving on to miscellaneous unfinished business. Mr. Ballerin? No, Seeker. Secra. That's Mr. Ballerin first.
Thank you, Mr. President. Give me a second while I find that seeker review. Okay. I ask that we move forward with a secret review for ordinance 1753-24.
Thank you. Will the clerk just read the action?
Resolved that the following action be classified as a Type 2 action for an upcoming state environmental quality review, and that the Albany Common Council was hereby designated as lead agency.
Discussion on this? Our council would like to say, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to clarify that this resolution is the beginning of the process. This will authorize myself and Corporation Council to begin the environmental review, but this does not say anything about the environmental review. There will be a later resolution that adopts the review that it's done.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? It passes. Continuing on official business, Mr. Johnson, did you have your hand up? Miscellaneous?
Thank you, Mr. President. So I just want to say, as I listened early, I just want to tell a quick story about receiving a call from a family that had concerns about one of their loved ones that was incarcerated. You know, I followed up that call. I made a call to that correctional facility and got transferred a number of times, but I ended up getting on the phone with the nurse, and the nurse told me what she was going to do. And it was a couple of days later, I got a call from one of the family members, and that young man said tell Councilman Johnson, tell DJ I said thank you, because that phone call triggered them to follow up on the situation. He ended up getting the treatment that he needed. And so we may feel like we're powerless as council people, but we do have a presence. When you make that phone call, what it does is it tells people that it's somebody that cares about that person. And a lot of times people are in some difficult situations. You know, sometimes it's COs in difficult situations, but more times it's inmates that's in situations, and they're human beings. And you know, if one of us, if one of our family members experience what I'm hearing about this young man who was a former student of mine, you know, just somebody that I absolutely loved and enjoyed his presence. It's disturbing to hear that there's no answer on a death certificate. And so I would encourage people, when you get those calls, to reach out, because like I said, people who answer the phone tend to respond to our phone calls. That's my experience, and when I get these calls, because they come more often than people would know. And so I'm saddened to hear that Lori doesn't have the answers that she should have the answers to. And I will be trying to assist her tomorrow and see if we can get the answers for her. So please know that when people come in here and they sit in that chair and they reaching out to us, a lot of times they're feeling helpless. And I just hope that people are compelled enough to make those phone calls if they get the phone calls that that I've received. And then also I just wanted to follow up on the vacancy study. You know, when we talked about the vacancy, we were a bit apprehensive about it being done in-house, especially in a department, a newly formed department. And I think that there's no attack against anybody that put the work in there. This is not like a finger pointing, but this is an important issue that we got to get it right. And we can't afford to let people still live under certain conditions that they're living under. It's a lot of room and for error. And the longer that the study goes on, you know, it's just not a good feeling. So I think that it's responsible, and especially when it's been brought up that other territories have done multiple studies. So the ask is not unreasonable, and I think it's the right thing to do, and we want to make sure that we get it right. So let's support this and give people closure on the questions that they have about this process. Thank you.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Okay, if there's no further business, motion to adjourn.
Aye.